The courtroom gasped as Malik, a wiry 12-year-old with a split lip and a bruised cheek, pointed a trembling finger at Officer Daniel Reed. "He beat me," Malik said, his voice cracking but firm, eyes locked on the man in uniform who sat stone-faced at the defense table. The air felt electric, heavy with the weight of a truth too raw for the polished wood and sterile lights of the room. Malik Jackson wasn't supposed to be here, standing in a courtroom in downtown Birmingham, Alabama, facing a cop twice his size and a system that seemed stacked against him. He was just a kid who loved sketching superheroes in his notebook and riding his bike through the cracked streets of his neighborhood. But 2 weeks ago, a routine walk home from the corner store had turned into a nightmare, one that would unravel secrets, ignite a community, and challenge the very meaning of justice. It was a muggy June evening when Malik, clutching a bag of chips and a soda, cut through the alley behind Carver Street. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. He hummed a tune, his sneakers scuffing against the gravel, unaware of the patrol car creeping up behind him. Officer Daniel Reed, a 15-year veteran with a reputation for keeping order, had been watching Malik for blocks. To Reed, Malik wasn't a kid, just another suspect in a neighborhood he patrolled with suspicion. "Hey, you!" Reed's voice boomed, sharp and commanding. Malik froze, his heart thudding. He turned to see the officer step out of the car, his hand resting on the baton at his hip. "What you got in that bag, kid?" Reed's tone carried an edge, like he'd already decided Malik was guilty of something. Malik stammered, holding up the chips. Just snacks, sir." Reed didn't listen. He advanced, his shadow looming over Malik, who backed up until his shoulders hit the alley's brick wall. "Don't lie to me," Reed growled. "I know your type." Before Malik could blink, the baton was out, and the first blow landed on his arm. Pain exploded, hot and sharp. Malik cried out, dropping the bag, but Reed didn't stop. Another hit caught his shoulder, then his ribs. "Stop. I didn't do anything." Malik sobbed, curling into himself. The chips crunched under Reed's boots as he loomed over the boy, his face a mask of cold authority. The alley wasn't empty, though. Across the street, Lena Carter, a 32-year-old community organizer with a fire in her heart and a phone in her hand, had been heading to a local youth meeting. She saw the patrol car, heard Malik's cries, and started recording. Her hands shook, but her resolve didn't. "Officer, stop," she shouted, stepping closer, her phone capturing every swing of the baton. Reed froze, caught in the lens, his eyes narrowing at Lena. "Mind your business," he snapped, but Lena didn't back down. "This is my business," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her chest. Lena's video went viral by morning. The grainy footage of a cop beating a black child spread like wildfire across social media, sparking outrage. Hashtags like "Justice for Malik" trended nationwide. Protesters flooded Birmingham streets, chanting Malik's name, while news anchors debated excessive force and systemic bias. But for Malik, the world shrank to the pain in his body and the fear in his heart. He didn't want to be a symbol. He just wanted to feel safe again. In the courtroom, Malik's testimony cut through the silence like a blade. His mother, Tanya, sat in the front row, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles paled. She'd raised Malik alone since his father died, working double shifts at a diner to keep them afloat. Seeing her son battered and scared broke something in her, but it also lit a fire. She'd contacted Lena, who connected them with a pro bono lawyer, Sarah Nguyen, a sharp-eyed advocate known for taking on tough cases. Sarah stood beside Malik now, her presence a quiet anchor as he faced Reed. Reed's defense team painted a different picture. They called Malik aggressive and non-compliant, claiming he'd reached for something in his pocket. The bag of chips, they argued, could have been mistaken for a weapon in the dim alley light. The courtroom murmured, some nodding, others scoffing. Sarah countered with Lena's video, played on a large screen for the jury. Gasps rippled through the room as Reed's baton struck Malik's small frame. The footage didn't lie, but would it be enough? Lena took the stand next, her voice steady but laced with emotion. I saw a child being attacked, she said. Malik wasn't a threat. He was scared, defenseless. She described Reed's aggression, the way he ignored Malik's pleas. The prosecution pressed her, had she provoked Reed? Was she biased against police? Lena held her ground. I'm biased toward justice, she said, her eyes meeting Malik's across the room. He gave her a small, grateful nod. The trial stretched over days, each one heavier than the last. Outside, protests grew louder, with signs reading, "No justice, no peace," and "Protect our kids." Inside, the courtroom became a battleground of truths and lies. Reed testified, his voice calm but rehearsed. I felt threatened, he said, claiming years of dangerous encounters had honed his instincts. Sarah tore into his story, pointing out inconsistencies. Why hadn't he called for backup? Why was there no body cam footage? Reed's answers faltered, his confidence cracking. Malik's testimony wasn't just about the beating. He spoke of his life, how he'd grown up dodging stereotypes, how teachers overlooked him, how neighbors warned him to stay out of trouble. I didn't do anything wrong, he said, his voice breaking. I just wanted to go home. The jury leaned forward, some wiping tears. Tanya clutched a tissue, her pride in her son warring with her pain. Lena's role didn't end in the courtroom. She organized rallies, spoke to reporters, and sat with Malik's family at night, helping them navigate the media storm. She'd faced her own battles, arrests during protests, threats from strangers, but she refused to back down. This isn't just about Malik, she told a crowd outside the courthouse. It's about every kid who's been hurt, every voice ignored. Her words carried weight, but they also drew enemies. Anonymous messages called her a troublemaker, warning her to stay quiet. She didn't. As the trial neared its end, tensions peaked. A leaked report revealed Reed had a history of complaints, mostly from black residents, that had been buried by the department. The news fueled the protests but also polarized the city. Some saw Reed as a good cop under pressure, others called him a symbol of a broken system. The jury, a mix of races and backgrounds, seemed torn. Could they see past their biases to the truth in Malik's eyes? The night before the verdict, Malik sat on his bed, sketching a superhero who looked like him, bruised but standing tall. Tanya watched from the doorway, her heart aching. You're so strong, baby, she whispered. Malik looked up, his eyes older than his years. I just want it to mean something, Mama, he said. Not just for me. Tanya nodded, pulling him close. She didn't know what the morning would bring, but she knew her son had already changed the world. In the courtroom, as the jury filed in, silence fell like a heavy curtain. The foreman stood, holding the verdict. Malik's hand found Tanya's, Lena's eyes locked on Sarah's, and Reed stared straight ahead, his jaw tight. The judge's voice broke the stillness, on the charge of excessive force. The judge's gavel fell like a thunderclap, silencing the courtroom as the verdict was read. On the charge of excessive force, we find the defendant, Officer Daniel Reed, guilty. Malik Jackson, the 12-year-old whose testimony had gripped the room, let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His mother, Tanya, gripped his hand, tears streaming down her face, while Lena Carter, the activist who'd recorded the incident, stood frozen, her heart pounding with a victory that felt both triumphant and fragile. The sentence came next: 8 months in jail, 3 years of probation, and a permanent ban from police work. It was a rare win, a black child's word against a cop's, upheld in a system that often turned a blind eye. But for Malik, the boy who'd only wanted to walk home with his chips and soda, the victory tasted bittersweet. The bruises on his body had faded, but the fear lingered, etched into his dreams. The courtroom cleared, and Malik felt the weight of every eye on him, some proud, some pitying, some angry. He was no longer just a kid, he was a symbol, whether he wanted to be or not. Outside, Birmingham was a tinderbox. The verdict split the city like a fault line. Protesters flooded the streets, chanting Malik's name, their signs blazing with demands: end police violence, justice for all. Lena stood at the forefront, her voice cutting through the noise. This isn't just about Malik, she told the crowd, her phone still in hand, now a tool for organizing rather than recording. It's about every child who's scared to walk home, every parent who prays their kid makes it back. The crowd roared, but across town, others seethed. Cops risked their lives, one man grumbled at a bar, echoing a sentiment shared in hushed tones and angry posts online. That kid was probably up to no good. Malik's story had gone viral, Lena's video looping endlessly on screens across the country. It sparked debates on news shows, where pundits argued over bad apples versus systemic bias. Hashtags like Justice for Malik trended, but so did Back the Blue. The city's wounds, long scabbed over, were ripped open. Malik hated the spotlight. At home, he buried himself in his sketchbook, drawing heroes who didn't need to fight cops, just ones who could fly away from it all. Tanya watched him, her heart breaking. She'd raised him to be careful, to keep his head down, but no amount of caution had protected him that night in the alley. Lena, meanwhile, channeled the outrage into action. Her community center became a hub for change, hosting workshops on knowing your rights and meetings with families who'd faced similar injustices. She invited Malik to speak to the kids there, hoping it would help him heal. At first, he refused, too shy, too raw. But one day, a girl named Aisha, no older than 9, asked him, "How'd you make them listen?" Malik hesitated, then said, "I just told what happened." And Lena had the video. Aisha's eyes widened, and Malik saw something shift in her. Hope, maybe. He started coming more often, teaching the kids to draw, sharing bits of his story. It wasn't easy, but it felt right. Sarah Nguyen, the lawyer who'd fought for Malik, wasn't done either. The verdict was a crack in the system, and she aimed to pry it open. She uncovered records showing Reed had a history of complaints mostly from Black and Latino residents that had been swept under the rug. Armed with this, she pushed for a federal investigation into the Birmingham Police Department. The mayor resisted, citing budget concerns, but public pressure forced his hand. By winter, the department agreed to body cams and an independent oversight board, though implementation was slow. Sarah didn't celebrate, she knew promises were easier than change. Malik's life changed in quieter ways. Tanya moved them to a new apartment, one with a small backyard where Malik could ride his bike without looking over his shoulder. She used part of a settlement from a civil suit to fund his therapy and save for his future. Malik's sessions with Dr. Carter, a therapist who understood trauma, helped him name the fear that woke him at night. "You're not what they did to you," Dr. Carter said. "You're what you choose to do now." Malik clung to that, pouring his energy into art. His latest piece, a boy standing tall against a storm, won a school contest, earning him a scholarship to an art camp. The community center grew, thanks to donations sparked by Malik's case. Lena expanded it, adding a computer lab and a mural painted by the kids, Malik's design at its center, a tree with roots deep in the earth, branches reaching for the sky. "That's us," he told Lena, pointing to the roots. "We're still here, still growing." Lena hugged him, her eyes wet. She'd faced threats, anonymous calls, slashed tires, but she kept going, driven by the kids who called her Miss Lena, and the families who trusted her to fight. A year later, Malik stood at a city council meeting, his voice stronger now. "I didn't want to be famous," he said, addressing a room of officials and residents. "I just wanted to be safe. I want that for every kid." The room applauded, but Malik saw the skeptics too, those who whispered about one bad cop or exaggerated stories. He didn't argue, he just kept speaking, his truth a quiet force. Tanya stood beside him, her pride fierce, while Lena and Sarah watched from the crowd, knowing this was only the beginning. The city changed, slowly. Body cams caught a few officers in lies, leading to suspensions. The oversight board gained traction, though it faced pushback from the police union. National activists visited Birmingham, citing Malik's case as proof that change was possible. But division lingered. Some saw Malik as a victim, others a troublemaker. Some praised Reed's conviction, others called it a miscarriage of justice. The debates played out online, in churches, at dinner tables, each side entrenched. Malik turned 13, taller now, his sketches more intricate. He still carried the alley in his bones, but he carried hope too. At the community center's anniversary, he unveiled a new mural, a city where kids ran free, no shadows chasing them. The crowd cheered, and Malik smiled, feeling lighter. Tanya, Lena, and Sarah stood together, their bond forged in the fight. They knew the work wasn't done. Systems don't heal overnight, and trust takes years to rebuild. But Malik's voice, once small, had sparked something unstoppable. His story lived on, not just in Birmingham but in every heart it touched. It asked questions that demanded answers. What is justice when a child must fight to be believed? What does it mean to mend a community fractured by fear and bias?